So this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. Part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, dated the 24th of January 2022. This is Monday, 24th of January 2024. And this is the kind of evidence of the stupidity of the British press. This is an idiotic, dishonest item that actually provides the pretext that Boris Johnson desperately needs. Boris Johnson needs the pretext of this diversion so that he can stage a stunt about defending the country against Russian attacks. This is the Times, the Murdoch Times, and the Murdoch Times is running an agenda. The agenda that Murdoch has always done for the last, the best part or the longest part of the 42 years or so that he has been. Is it 42 years? No, it's more than 42 years that he has owned the scum and later he acquired the ownership of the Times, which is running the thing that we have started with. So it's the death. The Times piece, this piece is evidence of the death of journalism in Britain. Because that is not the story, because the international kind of evidence is that Putin is not. That is the evidence that is available. Now, we don't know about the internal secret kind of communications or evidence or insights. But based on the publicly accessible evidence, the threat of Putin attacking the UK is absolutely exaggerated at this moment. But what this does, parading Putin's naval kind of presence off the Irish coast, which is what has happened during the day, that is Monday the 24th of January 2022, that serves to give the appearance, a plausibility, a plausible kind of credibility to the kind of reason for Boris Johnson to be making a kind of military overture or military statement. Apparently aimed, quote, against Putin's maneuvers. But as evidence shows, Johnson has been a guest while he was in the post of UK's foreign secretary. Guest of a Putin supporting person somewhere in Southwest Europe, either Greece or Italy, where Johnson was filmed appearing in a disheveled state without any kind of official staff with him, etc., etc. And there has been this absolutely compelling commentary, which is the subject of the ongoing defamation action brought by Aaron Banks against Carol Cordwalder, who has been the main British reporter publishing multiple stories about Aaron Banks' connection with Putin and Putin's Russia with the suggestion that Brexit was actually something that was significantly, if not entirely, created by Putin. And the current state of Boris Johnson's kind of status in the office of Prime Minister of the UK is the highest point of kind of tension within the UK parliamentary party since Boris Johnson was active as the front person for Brexit, which has been suspected as being part of Putin's strategy. And it seems that Boris Johnson is facing additional pressure, even if he hides the contents of Sugra's report, which is again part of the online kind of movements in terms of the story during the day, since the Fleet Street papers were printed last night. If Sugra's report is concealed in terms of the facts and the evidence and the contents of emails, etc., as has been being reported during the day, that Johnson plans to hide, conceal, and suppress the actual evidence contained in Sugra's report. If that is the case, then he will not have kind of stopped the uncertainty, stopped the challenges against him staying in post. So is it, I mean, this is a logical observation, is it continuing? Is it Putin continuing the strategy to keep someone like Boris Johnson in post, which is detrimental to the democracy of the UK and the other democratic or democracy-related factors within the UK? That is something that can be put at this stage, this time of the day, which is 17:38 hours GMT on Monday, the 24th of January 2022. If that is the case, then of course it will only strengthen in the long term the conviction that Putin created Brexit. Not only did he significantly support Brexit, but he created Brexit. Nothing to do with the British patriotism, whatever, but in order to further his own strategy, whatever the strategic kind of calculations are or were or have been. And there is more than one coincident or coincidental factors present in Brexit and far-right kind of UK politicking being connected with Putin's strategy and Putin's kind of presence. Nigel Farage, a far-right fascist and a racist, right from his school days, is fond of Putin's Russia. Amazing. As he is his fantasy figure, the French fascist Marine Le Pen, who was funded by Putin or who was financially helped by Putin. So all of these factors coincide, or are they more than coincidences? Now, at home, Johnson has been facing this one. And the feature of the picture of Nusrat Ghani there on the left of the screen is representative of the uncertainty, career uncertainty that Johnson faces. Now, this is the Daily Mail, which is itself engaged in creating plausible diversions from that story, so that Johnson is shielded and helped. They've got more space against Angela Rayner, the telltale toothbrush in his pocket as they strolled out of our flat. Angela Rayner's boyfriend, and they're painting him as married MP with whom Angela Rayner is having the affair. And it seems that they've got a story about Ukraine where a puppet regime plot is being hatched by Putin, but Putin's propaganda people have denied this today in the Daily Mail. And the Daily Mail has got a piece against the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern having postponed her marriage because of the latest lockdown restrictions she has imposed, or she has had to impose. And the Daily Mail is dead politically when it comes to the real issues, because defending and supporting and promoting and doing the dirty work for Boris Johnson is not compatible with the needs of the community, needs of the population. All of Fleet Street is completely corrupt and dishonest. And there was an exceptional piece in the Sunday People yesterday, which had the headline that people will starve to death due to poverty. And we shall come to the People, Sunday People, and the claim that people will starve to death. People in poverty will starve to death, and that millions of people in this country are in poverty. Now, we have been saying as a campaign, as a diagnosis of world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street in every single edition, that there was no way, there was absolutely no way that Fleet Street was even aware of the slightest bit of responsibility to report truthfully about the state of discrimination and state of hunger that so many millions are kind of nearing, or semi-hunger state that so many millions of people are existing in. So the Sunday People yesterday was doing a token job and bragging that the person who they're featuring in the piece yesterday had started the campaign against poverty and hunger 10 years previously on the pages of the Sunday People, the paper itself. If that is the case, the 10 years, then in the 10 years that have passed, the Sunday People hasn't followed up and hasn't told the truth about the persisting and increasing poverty in the UK. So we'll talk about the People itself failing and the other papers as well. Now, here is a diversionary piece that they have got about Ghislaine Maxwell and how the American FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, finally ran Ghislaine Maxwell to ground. Now, this suggests that as far as the FBI are concerned, the retrial that Ghislaine Maxwell will have will not substantially make any difference to the fact that she is a criminal. The retrial that has been secured by Ghislaine Maxwell's side is a technical, very short-term kind of relief for her, very short-term, because none of the facts that were presented to the court during the actual trial would have been affected by the fact that a juror or two jurors included in the panel of jurors that actually sat during the trial made some technical errors. Nothing more than that, because whatever errors technically those two jurors admittedly made would not have altered the facts of the case against Ghislaine Maxwell. So this retrial is not going to acquit her whatsoever. And the jurors, whoever the jurors are, would be very, very stupid to behave in any way that allows Maxwell's crimes to be kind of forgotten or ignored or overlooked. So the actual trial, we'll have to wait until the actual trial. But this is an extract adapted from Ghislaine Maxwell by Nigel Cawthorne. It's a book by Gibson Square, 9.99 pence, and it is going to be available online, etc., etc. So this is an extract. This is not an original story that kind of updates the news factors, the factual evidence of the procedures that are not completed yet, but the procedures that are still in process. So the Daily Mail is against lockdown and restrictions. So it is mocking Jacinda Ardern in this heading. Just 9 Omicron cases, but New Zealand's Prime Minister imposes isolation of up to 24 days. Now they are against lockdown and they're against Sturgeon as well. Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, is equally condemned in the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail wants all lockdown restrictions to be ended. And that is also part of the commentary or the narrative that suggests that Johnson is achieving protection against the COVID-19. And then they've given the main kind of piece on pages 4 and 5 to the story about Angela Rayner having a boyfriend who is married. Now that's a lie, because her boyfriend is not married. He is separated from his wife, which is effectively the same as being divorced, because he is free, he's separated. So we don't need to know the terms of the separation. And Angela Rayner herself is either divorced or permanently separated from her husband. So they've found this thing about this boyfriend, best known as Jeremy Corbyn's leadership campaign director in 2016. Mr. Terry hit back at allegations of electoral fraud after the Sunday Times claimed he was really living in Brighton with his wife when he was serving as a councillor in Barking, East London. To serve on a councillor must sign an official declaration that they live or work in the area. The newspaper also reported that a trade union official named Ellie Baker lived at the Barking flat, owned by Mr. Terry and his wife. His lawyer said she was his lodger. This allegation is categorically untrue, Terry said in the response to the claims. The evidence irrefutably demonstrates I meet all residency requirements set down in electoral law to be a councillor in Barking and Dagenham. My wife, whom I married in June this year, lives in Brighton and works as a junior doctor. Like many people these days, we try to strike a balance between our careers and our personal lives. Unfortunately, this means we cannot live together as a husband and wife every day, as we one day hope to do. When you serve people in the NHS or as a local councillor, that's a choice that sometimes has to be made. Those promoting this story for political reasons tried to use the same false allegations against me before, and I was completely cleared by the police. Similar questions about Mr. Terry's residency were raised in 2014 when he was first elected to the council. When it was claimed he had given inaccurate details on his nomination papers, police later dropped the investigation. When Mr. Terry was elected to the House of Commons, he had the backing of Corbynite grassroots group Momentum after the previous Labour MP for Ilford South, Mike Gapes, defected to Change UK. The following year, he became Mrs. Rayner's deputy leader campaign director. At the time, he tweeted saying how proud he was to be working with her and posed for photos of the pair of them together with beaming smiles and red rosettes of the campaign trail. What they have to say about these latest pictures might be rather more interesting. And there, the Daily Mail's story substance includes the fact that Angela Rayner condemned the Conservatives as the scum party or as the scum, and she condemned their racism and other nasty things that the Conservatives do. We don't accept that these two having an affair are breaking anything, either morally or legally, because both of them are separated, if not divorced, from their spouses. So they are free to have personal relationships with consenting parties. And they are not betraying anything there. That is to say, they are not violating any law in terms of financial accountability or anything. The Sun and the Daily Mail are desperate to kind of demonize Angela Rayner, who is the more effective critic of Boris Johnson, the liar, than Keir Starmer, who is a Tory. Ever be? Now, the Financial Times is talking about Financial Times has got a piece on page 2. Well, it has got a piece about Nusrat Ghani. We shall come to the piece about Nusrat Ghani a bit later, but this is the piece that we would like to kind of cover. It's under corruption report, and it says UK outgunned in graft fight by criminals, says charity. And the charity is named as Corruption on Spotlight and is described as an anti-graft charity. Said in a report published today that the government spends £852 million each year on the budgets of national level agencies that fight economic crime, Meanwhile, the National Crime Agency estimates that money laundering costs the UK some 100 billion pounds, while separate losses to fraud amount to about 190 billion. So it's about nearly 300 billion, 290 billion plus the 852 million that is spent is the cost, according to this report. The Spotlight report said that authorities were being overstretched and outgunned by the criminals. We are calling for the UK government to create a central economic crime fighting fund by reinvesting some of the revenue law enforcement agencies generate back into their work, said Suzanne Hawley, Spotlight's executive director. Spotlight estimated that the amount allocated to agency budgets represented not 0.09% of the government's expenditure, while the amount lost through money laundering and other economic crime was about 14.5% of the gross domestic product, GDP. The police, which the government says will receive 12 billion this year, were not included in the report. Spotlight has called for a new economic crime fund using recovered ill-gotten gains. The Serious Fraud Office generated about 1.6 billion in settlements known as deferred prosecution agreements in the past 5 years, as well as millions more in fines and penalties. But these flow to the exchequer rather than being reinvested in crime prevention. Prosecutions for money laundering have fallen 35% since 2016, according to Spotlight. The National Crime Agency has obtained fewer than 5 prosecutions a year for economic crime offences over the past 5 years. Last year, the Serious Fraud Office secured the conviction of 4 people, down from 13 in 2016-17. Now, this is a report promoting a particular charity, but the charity itself is wrong, as is, of course, the financial crimes, because there is no reference. There is no reference to the actual role played in the prevention of crime, prevention of fraud, and the kind of reduction in crime. The role played by the judicial bureaucracy, which is a corrupt and criminal bureaucracy in itself at every stage. And there is no reference to the role played by the various so-called executive agencies of the central government departments. And there is no record whatsoever of what Parliament is doing in terms of monitoring the role of any of the executive agencies or holding the executive to account. So as the Fleet Street papers are actually in the main kind of platforms of deceased journalism, that is to say dead journalism, as well as disease, that is sick journalism, so are the charities. So is this Spotlight itself and all the other charities, the big name charities, the big profile charities, covering all aspects of the government's duties that are being betrayed, like housing, like employment, and like prevention of racism. When the incumbent in the post of the prime minister is himself the worst racist, then there is no question that there is anything being done to end racism, let alone end anti-Muslim hatred. Now, this is the piece that the Financial Crimes is running about Nusrat Ghani. Now, the reflection on the light reflection is making it difficult to look at the actual piece. But let's read the heading is story divisions. That gives the game away. It doesn't say racism. It doesn't say Islamophobia. It says Tory divisions. The how stupid of the financial crimes. It's not Tory divisions. And it's written by that stupid boy Sebastian Payne. He's misdescribed as white wall editor. He's an idiot. Now, financial crimes is saying in the heading to the piece by Sebastian Payne, Prime Minister accused of ignoring bias claim. There is no sign in the financial crimes of Islam, Muslim, racism, whatsoever. Look at that. So it's dead journalism. Former minister says, and it's a negative kind of reference to Nusrat Ghani. Her name doesn't appear in the financial crimes heading or subheading or in the main copy. Where she does appear is as a relegated kind of outsider, whereas it is central to her kind of experience of racism and anti-Muslim brazenness by Boris Johnson and his cabal operatives. So Sebastian Payne idiotically starts his paragraph. Boris Johnson was accused yesterday of failing to investigate allegations of Islamophobia. That's a lie. Boris Johnson is actually the one who sacked her. But this paints him as if he's a third party. He didn't have a direct part in her sacking and in her being called a Muslimness being a fault. And then again, it denies this whole thing. The claim comes as the UK Prime Minister prepares for the publication of a long-awaited investigation into Whitehall. Now, the financial crimes, we call it financial crimes because of the extensive stupidity and the length of idiocy that it goes to hide the truth and to hide the racism. And in this case, aggravated racism, which is the anti-Muslim, latest evidence of anti-Muslim behavior by the anti-Muslim, notorious anti-Muslim Boris Johnson. So the moron is saying, so that's 1, 2, 3. In the fourth paragraph, he mentions Nusrat Ghani. And he has converted this into an extension of other things that are going on within the Conservative Party, whereas it is not. Anti-Muslim behavior and policy and agenda is a serious part of the Conservatives' operations right from the beginning. So that's the Sebastian kind of Payne, who is an idiot, as we say. And to call somebody like Sebastian Payne, with his record, editor of anything, is an insult to the word. I mean, whoever is called Whitehall editor, what is the job? What do they edit? Editor automatically implies kind of supervisory policy work in addition to the technical work. So what do they actually supervise? I mean, somebody that behaved identically in 2014, identically to Ted Jury, who was the kind of employee of the filthy Richards, who owned the Beaverbrook titles, the Express titles. And both Ted Jury and Sebastian Payne, with kind of a difference of a few minutes, I think, were present in the Stepney Way, spot where Lutfur Rahman, then incumbent as the mayor, at the expense of the community in Tower Hamlets, was posing with a group of Bangladeshis, mainly Bangladeshis, near the Stepney Green School as part of the kind of propaganda for the so-called second election that was held in May 2014, that very election which was the subject of a petition signed by 4 people and which was actually processed by the person called the election commissioner, Richard Morey. So those people who were posing with Lutfur Rahman were mainly Bangladeshis, mainly Silotis, and all of them were absolutely ignorant of the game that they were being portrayed as part of. The game was that Lutfur Rahman was popular or respected or supported by the Bangladeshi electors in Tower Hamlets. What actually happened was that these people were the kind of guests. The people were the guests at routine kind of meals that were kind of provided to them at the Water Lily Centre in the Mile End Road during the kind of years of Lutfur Rahman being incumbent in the post of mayor at the expense of the community in Tower Hamlets. So when Sebastian Payne and Ted Jury appeared, Sebastian Payne wrote a piece in the Spectator. I'm looking for it now. Both Ted Jury and Sebastian Payne filed idiotic false and misleading kind of copy for each of their titles. Ted Jury for the Beaverbrook Express and Sebastian Payne for the Spectator, that occasion. Because their so-called journalism didn't serve any purpose whatsoever. That is to say, they didn't talk about the corruption, they didn't talk about the need for Tower Hamlets Council to be rid of the corrupt post of mayor. And they didn't talk about anything else about the electors. So they were actually kind of used by the propaganda kind of strategy adopted by Luthuroman or his supporters. The supporters, this is the paid ones that he paid at the to the cost of the people in the borough. Because Luthuroman had several lying operations for him going on at the time. I'll come to the lying operations in a minute, again as an update. So this is the piece that Sebastian Payne wrote. Well, there are several pieces he wrote for the Spectator about Tower Hamlets and about Luthuroman. So let's go back to the list of items that he did write, or did have the bylines on, yeah? So this is dated the 4th of April, 5th of April 2014, and it's headed An Afternoon in Tower Hamlets on the Stump with Luthuroman. Now, the picture, the group picture contains identifiable faces that are all Bangladeshis. And it's a picture that has this poster being held with this picture with the persons, and identifiable names that I can recognize in this, of course, include Luthuroman himself, and to his right is the officially recognized and listed husband of his fellow councillor Rabina Khan, and he was the councillor Aminur Rahman. And then there is a man called is Abu Tahir Chowdhury or Kalam Chowdhury. And part of the face just behind Aminur and between Aminur and Luthuroman is the face of a person called Syed Nurul. Syed Nurul stood as the Liberals' candidate for Parliament in 2005 against George Galloway. And George Galloway publicly insulted Syed Nurul as being very, very, very bad. That is the insult that George Galloway published about Syed Nurul. Now, Syed Nurul is, of course, no longer active in Tower Hamlets, but that is the picture that was published by The Spectator on the 5th of April 2014 at 1 a.m., which is based on that picture being taken on the previous day, 4th of April 2014. So let's see I shall read two of the paragraphs in that Sebastian Payne piece. It's been a busy week for Lutfur Rahman. On Monday, the mayor of Tower Hamlets was the subject of a panorama investigation, which alleged he had misdirected public funds. Yesterday, Eric Pickles announced he was sending in PricewaterhouseCoopers to conduct a fraud investigation. Rahman has vehemently denied all of the claims, describing the BBC as Islamophobic. Remember Nusrat Ghani and today's Fleet Street papers talking about Islamophobia. On Thursday, he announced a community walkabout to counter panorama lies. So I decided, that is, Sebastian Payne decided, to go along and find out what Rahman had to say. Well, I can say that Sebastian Payne didn't find out anything about what Rahman had to say, really. Arriving outside the Sir John Cass School in Stepney this afternoon, that is, he is writing this based on the date 4th of April, not on the date of publication 5th of April. Arriving outside the Sir John Cass School. Now, Sir John Cass School is very parallel in the street parallel to Stepney Green, which has Stepney Green School. So John Cass School in Stepney this afternoon. I found a group of around 75 waiting for the mayor. There was a fraternal vibe. I did not spot a single woman during my time there. Now, that is completely stupid. This is so stupid that it cannot be condemned sufficiently strongly. If the behavior of Boris Johnson about Muslim women is anything to go by, then Muslim women have really not missing anything by not being present in any political display. And this is a dig which is so stupid. I did not spot a single woman during my time there amongst the crowd who hugged and greeted each other. Now, these are people almost like members of the same village. Because, as I said, I know quite a few of them in the picture. Well, let's read them again. This Abu Tahir and his colleague, who was a teacher at the school, language school, based off the Bethnal Green Road. And then a man called Abdul Khalik, who I have helped actually with his serious issues with housing, that the Peter Shore, the member of parliament at the time, failed to help him about. So that is Abdul Khalik. And there is this husband, officially listed as the husband of Rabina Khan, and then Sayyid Nurul, then Lutfur Rahman himself, then Across one other person is Ohid Ahmed. Quite apart from that, the others are familiar, but their names are not listed there. But I could find out their names, almost all of them. Now, Sebastian Payne then is running a picture taken by Ted Jury of then councillor Ghulam Rabbani. And the caption to that picture that Ted Jury posted on his Twitter account reads, Lutfur's councillor Ghulam Rabbani most pleased to see me, that is Ted Jury, at Mayor's rally. Came up close with camera to say hello. And Rabbani was holding a copy of the Evening Standard that has a picture of Lutfur Rahman and Ken lying still Livingston. It doesn't say what date that Evening Standard item was published on. And there is a still from the and the caption in the Twitter account by Sebastian Payne contains a wrong spelling, because this is the picture, this is what he writes, and there is this third word is wrong. Lutfur is disturbing lots of these panoramalized leaflets to public. Wonder who is paying for these. Actually, the word disturbing is wrong. It should be distributing lots of these panoramalized leaflets. Now, wonder who is paying for these. Now, Sebastian Payne has not followed up this particular piece or any of the pieces that he wrote between that date and in the aftermath of the ruling by Richard Morey on the 23rd of April 2015 against Lutfur Rahman. Not only has Sebastian Payne not followed up, nor has Ted Jury, nor has Eric Pickles or any of his successors, nor has the Metropolitan Police, nor has the Director of Public Prosecutions, nor has the Crown Prosecution Service, because they made all these quite potential explosive comments. Wonder who is paying for these, which is absolutely legitimate question. But Lutfur Rahman has not been prosecuted for any crime. Lutfur Rahman has not been brought before the disciplinary kind of panels of anything. The only disciplinary action that has been taken against Lutfur Rahman, connected with his kind of being called a crook and a corrupt mayor by Richard Morey, has been done by the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal that took action following a reference or referral by the SRAs, Solicitors Regulating or Regulation Authority. As a result of the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal hearing that was held without Lutfur Rahman being present, Lutfur Rahman was struck off as a solicitor. That's the only action that has been taken against Lutfur Rahman based on all the hundreds of published items of allegations against Lutfur Rahman as a crook and as an abuser of the resources of the Tar Hamlets Council, resources of the people of Tar Hamlets. Now here, going back to Sebastian Payne, So he points out the one particular contradiction in the Lutheran leaflet. He says, I'll let you know, that is Sebastian Payne writing in the Spectator, dated the 5th of April 2014, but it's actually written on the 4th of April, not 5th of April. But 5th of April is the date when it was published. So Sebastian Payne says, I'll let you judge how accurate these statements are. But it's worth pointing out that on the topic of community grants, the leaflet states, and it quotes, the mayor is completely within his rights to overrule council officers, unquote. Then it says, that is Sebastian Payne is saying, 2 paragraphs down, it alternatively says, and then that is quoting the leaflet, Lutheraman's leaflet. All decisions about council spending go through a series of checks and balances that involve council officers. That is obviously, in the first quoted bit, it says that the Lutheraman was within his rights to overrule council officers. But then in the second one, it says, all decisions about council spending go through a series of checks and balances that involve council officers. Now, both Sebastian Payne and Lutheraman are lying there in parts, because Sebastian Payne then doesn't have, in the rest of the piece, any factual kind of reference to anything that can actually prove him to be consistent with his query about Lutheraman's contradictions and defiance and illegality. And then it says, 2 paragraphs down, it alternatively says all decisions. They also distributed the autumn 2013 edition of Mayor's News, which features no less than 7 pictures of Mayor Rahman, along with his achievements to make tower hamlets safer. The event was marketed as a community walkabout, but there was precious little walking going on. Rahman spent the 90 minutes I was there posing with a variety of supporters, moving no more than 10 meters away from the point he initially arrived. As you can see photo above, Rahman's supporters, who turned up hardly represented the wider demographic trends of Tower Hamlets. This is a 2011 breakdown of the borough's ethnicity. So he has a link to a website about the ethnicity, the census, etc. I spoke to one of his cabinet members, Alibor Chaudhry, the man responsible for Tower Hamlets' 1.2 billion budget, who recently said of Labour's mayoral candidate, within quotation now, quoting Alibor Chaudhry, Oswald Mosley had his black shirts, John Biggs has his black cardigans. Instead of welcoming the Pickles investigation like Rahman, Chaudhry said it's all really about headline generation. Yet Chaudhry cheerfully posed for a picture, for a photo. And he has got links to the pictures that have Alibor Chaudhry and Lutfur Rahman. Having attended weekend campaigning sessions with the Tories, Labour and UKIP, I can confidently say that the gathering of Rahman and his Tower Hamlets First party is by far the most unnerving, bizarre, and amateur. There was very little campaigning and no talk of policies, just posing, posturing, and aimless standing around. The Panorama allegations appear to have unnerved Rahman and his supporters, who must be worried about mayor's election. The last mayoral election in 2010 had a 25%, whereas Rahman garnered 52% of the vote. They know that if the turnout is significantly higher this time, Rahman might will be in trouble. Now, obviously, Rahman got elected at the election that Sebastian Payne referred to, that took place the following month, that is May, followed by the April when Sebastian Payne wrote that piece. And it's completely stupid because Sebastian Payne assumes that John Biggs is correct without the fact that John Biggs was no different than Luther Rahman in terms of lack of ethics, lack of morality, lack of accountability, lack of democracy. And few months before that date, that date is the 4th of April 2014, when Sebastian Payne actually went to the John Cass School in Stepney. On the 13th of September 2013, that is the September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, let's say 6 months previously, John Biggs told the BBC television that Luther Rahman's kind of financial decisions were favoring those parts of the Bharat, Tower Hamlets, that had, his word, Bengali majority. Now that's a lie, as we have said repeatedly, because Luther Rahman's financial decisions and all the other decisions that affected other people, affected, that is, as a result of the council's resources being used by Luther Rahman in any way. Luther Rahman's decisions were primarily, solely, only intended to benefit those who would electorally support him, regardless of whether they're Bangladeshis or Bengalis or non-Bangladeshis or non-Bengalis, which is a very different thing from saying that it's aimed at favoring Bengalis. That is what the ignorant John Biggs racistly chooses to call the Bangladeshis. The people in Tower Hamlets are not Bengalis, they're Bangladeshis. And we can spend hours explaining the difference and the significance of the difference. And what has happened as a result of the likes of Sebastian Payne and others using the term Islamophobia is that they are themselves anti-Muslim. And in this piece in the Financial Times, which took me back to 2014 to explain the evidential kind of contents of Sebastian Payne's behavior and role. And he goes 1, 2, 3, 4. In the 4th paragraph of his financial crimes piece, Sebastian Payne manages to recognize Nusrat Ghani, who said on Saturday that a Tory whip informed her that her Muslimness was raised as an issue by Downing Street for her being fired from government. Ghani, who served as a transport minister from the January 2018 until February 2020, told the Sunday Times that the whip said her Muslim women, I'll read that again. Ghani, who served as a transport minister from January 2018 until February 2020, told the Sunday Times that the whip said her Muslim woman minister status was making colleagues feel uncomfortable. She stated she felt humiliated and powerless and was warned not to discuss the issue or her career and reputation would be destroyed. Mark Spencer, Chief Whip identified himself as the whip she spoke to in March 2020, but described her comments as completely false and defamatory. Downing Street said yesterday that Johnson met Ghani in July 2020 after he was made aware of these extremely serious claims and later wrote her expressing his serious concern and inviting her to begin a formal complaint process. Number 10 added, the Conservative Party does not tolerate prejudice or discrimination of any kind. Following this statement, Ghani responded that she was deeply disappointed at the situation, noting that she felt the allegations were a government matter and not for the Tory party. She added that Johnson told her he could not get involved in the dispute. Spencer echoed Downing Street's statement. It is disappointing that when this issue was raised before Ms. Ghani declined to refer the matter to the Conservative Party for a formal investigation. Now, this is a lie because it was a government matter. It was not the Conservative matter, although the Conservatives had a deep, long history of racism and anti-Muslim behavior. He said, I provided evidence to the Singh investigation into Islamophobia, which concluded that there was no credible basis for the claims. Now, look at the division. Singh investigation. Who the XXXX is Singh? This Singh must be another racist stooge and mental slave. Ghani was defended by several prominent conservatives, including Sajid Javid, Health Secretary, who described her allegations as a very serious matter that warranted a proper investigation. He said, I would strongly support her in making a formal complaint. She must be heard. Well, as our campaign has published on dozens of occasions, Sajid Javid, we call him Sajid Stupid. And we can give elaborate details and updaters in due course, but I'll come to that in a minute. Dominic Raab, Deputy Prime Minister, told Sky News the allegations were incredibly serious, but pointed out that she had declined to make a formal complaint. Now, what they're doing by saying repeatedly that it was her fault that she didn't make a complaint. Now, we say that she shouldn't have to be put in that position. It was Johnson who is the liar, who did the wrongs. And it was Johnson who was being appeased by the anti-Muslim morons that were attending or taking part in that meeting where they said that her being a Muslim was her fault. Think about that. And there is no evidence of the moron, the idiot boy, Sebastian Payne, understanding any of this. But then this idiot boy, he's an idiot, but he's not the only one. The whole of Fleet Street, including the Guardian, are politically dead, morally dead, ethically dead, and journalistically non-existent, despite the fact that they keep publishing millions of words and millions of links every single year. And they have not deviated from their actual role and type during this day-to-day, the Monday, when this particular incidence or instance of anti-Muslim behavior and racist behavior by Johnson and his cabal has been referred to mainly by the fact that Johnson has staged a propaganda kind of item saying that he has ordered an investigation into what Nusrat Ghani has alleged. this is not going to be of any significance at all. So going back to the death of politics, death of accountability, death of morality in the UK, let's look at the behavior of Boris Johnson as he started. Boris Johnson is being given the propaganda kind of diversion, the diversionary propaganda pretext that, number one, consists of the role being played by Vladimir Putin. As we said, Putin is widely regarded as having engineered a lot of power behind the Brexit propaganda. But it may be the case that Putin created the Brexit kind of issue or the Brexit operation following the stupid announcement by Dodgy Dave that there would be a Brexit referendum. Putin may not have initiated the Brexit thing, but Putin took full advantage of the fact that there was a referendum due to be held about the future of the UK as a member of the European Union. And there are too many coincidences, too many connections between Putin and Brexiteers. The main agitators against the European Union, like Nigel Farage, he is connected with Putin and Russia. And Nigel Farage's spiritual friend and the woman he fantasized about with having all kinds of personal sexual relationship with Marine Le Pen, as was reported by the magazine Private Lie. And Aaron Banks and other Brexiteers, financial connections. And also the fact that Johnson, as I said at the beginning, was photographed or reportedly seen emerging from a night spent with a Putin supporter somewhere in Italy or somewhere in Greece. And that Boris Johnson appeared in their kind of description, disheveled and not accompanied by a government official or officials, which he should have been, because he was the foreign minister of the UK at the time. The suggestion was, and the insinuation in that piece was that Boris Johnson was compromised by Putin and Putin's regime. So there are too many connections. Whether there has been any kind of recorded transactions of funds is not the main thing. The main thing is the connections. You don't have to have financial kind of links in order for it to be immoral or corrupt or politically significant. Now, this is the kind of Daily Mirror doing this about Nusrat Ghani's allegations in the edition page 7 of the Daily Mirror, covering the piece, and it includes extensive and a reference to Nadim Zahawi, who is the education secretary in the claims. And he says that the allegations must be investigated properly and racism rooted out. Now, this is not the first time that Johnson has been reported as being anti-Muslim. This is not the first time at all. And Johnson is a known repeat racist because he makes repeated racist references. And of course, at the same time, it has to be said that Johnson has employed mental slaves like Tony Sewell. Tony Sewell has been a mental slave for a very long time, too long. Because Sewell had been given a platform on the weekly mental slave paper called The Voice. Now, The Voice was an offshoot of the East End News, and it was an offshoot created as a response to me on the East End News. You'll talk about The Voice and its kind of mental slave initial kind of funding and launching and appearance another time, because that will take, or that will need, extensive amount of time, of longer than is available in this particular edition. Now, as I said, the Fleet Street journalism is dead. There is no investigative journalism by Fleet Street or by any of the other media in the so-called mainstream in the UK, or by any of the other outlets that are published from addresses outside of London, or in the case of Scotland, from Glasgow or from Edinburgh. And there is no investigative journalism, full stop. So, for example, this Nusrat Ghani statement was published mainly by the Sunday Times, and the others in Fleet Street, who kind of keep an eye on what is happening online, on their so-called rivals, they picked up. They didn't actually investigate the story, and the kind of sequence of events that must have led to the piece being published by the Sunday Times will be known later. It is not known at this stage as to what happened in order to make the kind of story in the main story in the Sunday Times concerning Nusrat Ghani's appointments and dismissal of her as the minister. I'm looking for the Daily Mirror and see if I can find the missing pages to connect with this probe Tory Islamophobia. Remember, this Islamophobia is itself an anti-Muslim word. If you just separate these two parts, because this is a conjunctive, Islam is one word and phobia, and connected by the O in the kind of structure of spelling joint words. And the phobia means fear. So if you say somebody is Islamophobic, then what you are saying is that that person is afraid of Islam, that is, Muslims who are of the Islamic faith. So that's a positive statement in the logical context. That is to say, anyone who is afraid of Islam, then it leads logically to justifying that person being afraid of Islam. And then anyone who is afraid of something or someone is then logically, morally, plausibly justified in taking action or actions in order to avoid or escape that which they are afraid of. Think about that. So if somebody is afraid of, let's say, an attacker, don't name them, but an attacker is coming to attack somebody, then the identified target is justified to take any action that is consistent with their self-defense or defending themselves against the attack which is imminent or likely. So if you say that somebody is an Islamophobic, you are suggesting, in the vocabulary, in the normal kind of normalized use of the Islamophobia, you are accepting that Islam is something to be afraid of. And at the same time, you are claiming that they or he or she who is afraid of Islam is also guilty of attacking Muslims. Think about that. So if you say that they are justified in defending themselves against that which attacks them, and you are saying at the same time that they are wrong to defend themselves. That is why Islamophobia itself is anti-Muslim. But here it is being used as being Islamophobia being used by those who support Muslims against attacks on them, that is the Muslims, by those who are antagonistic to Muslims and Islam. So the word should be anti-Muslim, not Islamophobic. Just as a comparison, linguistic comparison in terms of grammar, anti-Semitic. If you say that the people who are antagonistic to Jewish people, although anti-Semitic is not really exclusively about Jewish faith, Semitic is an ethnic kind of group, ethnic identity. So Muslims, many Muslims are Semitic as well as Jews. But this Semitic has been now assigned completely to those people in the Jewish faith, which is another controversial and wrong use of the word. But as it has been normalized as a reference to the Jewish people who are being attacked by anti-Jewish people, and the word is anti-Semitic. So it should follow that Muslims who are attacked by enemies of Islam or attackers of Islam should be kind of referred to in that context as being attacked by anti-Muslims. Okay? So think about the short diagnosis of this. So Islamophobia itself is wrong, is anti-Muslim. So these are the close-ups of these statements. So Sebastian Payne in the Financial Crimes is using the same wrong word as is the Guardian today, and as is the I newspaper, as is the Daily Mail, the scum. The Daily Mail and the scum and the Times have got various lengths of pieces about the same so-called story. But despite the fact that the Times has got 2 pages, it has got wrong. It has got the facts wrong, the sequences wrong, the analysis wrong. And it is proving, by being wrong on so many levels, that it is itself anti-Muslim. It is itself racist. So, whatever investigation or probe or inquiry as being reported online during the day, Monday the 24th of January 2022, whatever inquiry has been staged, it's a staging of an inquiry. It's not a truthful, truth-seeking inquiry. And the worst thing is that this is an inquiry so-called ordered to save the, quote, reputation of the very person, anti-Muslim person who has perpetrated the anti-Muslim behavior, which is to sack Nusrat Ghani. So we shall be looking at the other two, that is the reference to the Nusrat Ghani allegations in the. Now look at this stupidity, death of journalism in the dirty digger Murdoch scum. Now this is a pornographic story. We would say this is a story almost selling the image. Is like a pimping the image, pimping the pornographic image of Katie Price. That is what the Sun is doing, the scum is doing. Instead of running the very politically explosive political story based on Nusrat Ghani and her being victimized by the anti-Muslim Boris Johnson because of her Muslimness. How grotesque is this story on the front page of the scum? Not only is it grotesque on the front page, but they've gone on to pages 4 and 5 promoting this pornographic story. I mean, this woman launched herself as the pornographic, quote, model based on her artificial kind of body. And the tabloid papers have been doing the pornography on her, and they have been making money by hooking, addicting their mainly idiotic, ignorant Little Englander readers into her pornographic kind of displays. She has no quality intellectually to any of these displays, but they keep using her displays while they also, quote, blame her, fabricate blaming her. Now there is no comparable space even to the Queen Brenda. I mean, the monarch herself is given, Brenda herself is given a token space pages later into page 7. So this is the page 7 that they've got. So she's now visiting her late husband's cottage in Sandringham, in Norfolk. The cottage is called Wood Farm in Sandringham. Notice the name again. It's a cottage, but it's a farm. Which one is the right one? And they've got 2 pages dedicated to their propaganda against Harry and Meghan. Now, this 2-page spread is kind of covered in mystery and in disguised as another propaganda for Charles, Brian, that is Brenda's son, Brian, who is Harry's dad. And they're saying that Brian is trying to stop Harry's memoir revealing effect of cheating on Diana. I mean, this is absolutely the correct thing, because Harry and William would have been devastated by the behavior that Charles indulged in while he was cheating on Diana, still being married to her. And these 2 boys must have suffered traumatizing experience. And this is not something that can be written off. They will be suffering those memories for the rest of their lives. And there is on page 2 a token recognition of the allegations made by Nusrat Ghani. And the phrase is absolutely factually correct, to Muslim. That actually acknowledges the fact that the anti-Muslim Johnson and his cabal are absolutely intolerant to Muslims. And then the Daily Mail has got 2 pages and pages about the picture of Angela Rayner and her kind of boyfriend, fellow MP. As we have said, this is nothing comparable to anything that is being done by Johnson in any way. So instead of saying Johnson, his name, they are saying PM. That is an elevation. This Johnson, if they said Johnson failed, it would have a different impact on the reader. There's a PM which covers this post or post holder with the kind of status that he doesn't deserve. The word PM or the phrase PM is intended to be one that is a dignified, responsible one. This is the picture of Nusrat Ghani taken with the liar Boris Johnson when the liar in 2015 was in the second year, as known, of his adulterous relationship with Jennifer Arcuri. Now, Nadim Zahawi has made the error of confusing the government with the Conservative Party, which is correctly identified as separated, two separate entities by Nusrat Ghani in her later comments in response to the references to the alleged failure on her part to file a complaint with the Conservative Party. She was not being dismissed or sacked by the liar Johnson as part of the Conservative Party proceedings. And this is something that is written in a way, in a style that actually shields, that is protects Boris Johnson's career. So all the papers, including the Financial Times, as I said, diagnose Sebastian Paine, the painfully idiotic Sebastian Paine. I mean, it's the paper that actually costs the price of about 5 or 6 copies of the Sun and the Mirror, has got substantially the same idiotic content. So why do they charge people so many times more than people are charged by the Mirror and the Sun and the Star and the I newspaper and the Daily Mail? But in order to get the facts on the record, we have to pay the price in cover price. And the price in content is the price in lost substance and magnitude of morality and ethics is far higher than any actual cash that we pay or have to pay in order to put the contents of their disinformation, misleading contents, and the dead journalism on the record. And the record of what? This is the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. That includes the world exclusive diagnosis of the so-called mainstream media in the UK, television mainstream, and their equivalent counterparts published from any other part of the UK and also beyond the oceans and the seas into the USA, North America and Canada, and in the USA, and back into the continent in Western Europe. Because the concept of freedom of journalism, freedom of press, that is practiced, the concept that is practiced and promoted in relation to the British papers and the French ones, the German ones, is not attached to the titles that are published in the so-called Eastern European countries, or by, of course, Moscow-based ones, most certainly not the ones controlled by China or North Korea. The only part they acknowledge is South Korea and Taiwan and Hong Kong, of course, and Singapore. Not so much Malaysia, but Singapore. And of course, Australia and New Zealand. And that part of Southern Africa that is still under the remnants of the influence of the British occupation of Southern Africa. So as I said, despite the fact that the Times has got 2 pages spread, and let's check what they're doing on the 2 pages. We should come to the if you can find the part that contains the 2 pages on Nusrat Ghani. So this is page 8 and the page 9. So the 2-page spread is physically quite substantial on any story. 2-page spread by the Times on the pages 8 and 9. Times of Monday, the 24th of January 2022. But the 2-page spread is separated, divided into 1, 2, 3, and 4 separate pieces. Now it's a lot of copy. 2 pages of the Times on pages 8 and 9. But all of that, all of the 4 pieces are written in accordance with the agenda to keep Johnson in post at number 10 Downing Street. And they're lying because they're saying, without any qualification, they're saying things like the Sue Gray investigation is going to cost the careers of a number of senior Downing Street officials. Now that's a lie. Because the main criminal, the main offender, the liar is Boris Johnson, not any of the officials. The officials may be only complicit, carrying out the orders of Johnson. But the main criminal, the main wrongdoer, the main evildoer, the main depraved perpetrator of the wrongs is Boris Johnson. It has always been Boris Johnson. Always been Boris Johnson, not according to me or according to this particular program, which is doing the diagnosis of the dead corpse of the politics that Boris Johnson is embodiment of. Dominic Cummings, who is notorious as a rule breaker himself, but he has had exclusive access to Boris Johnson's operations. So, on that particular definition of his having factual access to Boris Johnson's record during the kind of most controversial and most decisive, if you like, or defining years or period that is to do with the Brexit lies or Brexiteering lies, Dominic Cummings has got exclusive access to the various evidence and various communications. So he says that he is not going to kind of speak to Sue Gray because he fears that Johnson will leak it, Johnson will publicize it and abuse that audio or verbal kind of statements that he might give to Sue Gray. So he has disclosed today the distinction between giving an audio or verbal statement or video statement to Sue Gray as opposed to making written statements from now on, because he wants to protect his testimony, disclosure from the abuse by Boris Johnson, who is most certainly going to be abusing any such video or recording. So what the Times is saying in those 2 pages, one is the Tory says Johnson failed to take Islamophobia claims serious. By the Tory, they are referring to the Muslim, because she is not speaking there as a Tory. She's speaking there as the Muslim target of anti-Muslim behavior by Boris Johnson. So they got it right when they say his name, Johnson, instead of PM. Because calling him Johnson actually takes away his clothing, under which he disguises himself as the Prime Minister. And so it said the Muslim woman says Johnson failed to take anti-Islamic claims seriously. No. So let's rewrite this, edit this heading. Muslim woman says Johnson failed to take claims of his being anti-Islamic seriously or anti-Muslim seriously. What they're doing is, all these papers in the various disguises, they keep using Islamophobia, and that completely makes a completely false misrepresentation of what the facts are in every case. So, reminding anyone who is viewing this for the first time, this is the world exclusive original diagnosis of Fleet Street, which is racist, which is anti-Muslim, which is stupid and pro-imperialist and anti-democratic, anti-accountability, anti-transparency. And there also in a profile, they're underrating Nusrat Ghani. Because in the heading, they say, MP whose star fell as suddenly as it had risen. Now they show in that heading that she didn't have substance. So let's read the prejudiced, biased piece on her, byline 2, Nadim Badshah, which is a very Afghan, Persian, Iranian name. So they have chosen a mental slave to wear that disguise of a byline. It may have been written by a completely non-Muslim, anti-Muslim, racist liar, but they have chosen the name of Nadim Badshah. And you can go into the nomenclatures of the region, Persia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and you can find this name. And this is a kind of misleading disguise. He says that after a career in investment banking and at the BBC, Nusrat Ghani made history in 2015 when she became the first Muslim woman elected as a conservative MP. Now that is a loaded load of expletives. There is no such thing as a first Muslim elected as a conservative MP, whatever. What is there? She didn't consult the Muslims, and she was not nominated by the Muslims, and she was not a representative politically, democratically of the optimum moral position that could be said to be taken by objectively defined collection of Muslims in this country, let alone in any particular constituency. And Wealdon in Sussex is not known for its association with Muslims politically, democratically, whatsoever. She was elected in Wealdon, East Sussex, 5 years after unsuccessfully standing in the seat of Birmingham Ledywood, the city where she grew up. Now, many members of parliament have been elected not at their first attempt at standing to seek the election, but at subsequent attempts. They have been having to make many attempts. So this is stupid, unremarkable. And then this mental slave, Nadim Badshah, or his byline, says the election result in Sussex was the start of a rise up the political ladder for the Brexiteer, who was born in Kashmir to Pakistani parents. Most certainly not. She is a Kashmiri, you moron. But we shall talk about the difference between Pakistani Kashmir, Indian Kashmir, and a bit of Chinese Kashmir in due course, not in this particular edition. In 2015, she was appointed a member of the Home Affairs Select Committee. And the whole thing defies that kind of insulting heading they have given to her profile. I mean, she is far more skilled and talented and knowledgeable than many of the current conservative MPs. So why do they say that her rise or her star fell as suddenly as it had risen? Because her being sacked as a Muslim by the notorious anti-Muslim racist is nothing to do with sudden. He is a living anti-Muslim liar and hater of Muslims. What is sudden about that? This is the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street that we make, and this is diagnostic discussion. This is not repeating things, but examining the evidence and the motivation and the role and the impact and the implications. Remember, we are talking about this Nadim Badshah as well. Would you have believed that? Would you have gone into the identity and the role and the servitude the mental servitude of the writer, so-called writer. You would have to have decades of first-hand experience about newspapers, about press at every stage. Well, I have had decades and I'm still investigating the craft. And it is based on the depth of the evidence that I have observed and I have examined over decades that I can say that Fleet Street is journalistically dead and the media is politically dead and democratically dead in this country, as the media is in the main counterparts, North America and Western Europe. And we have regularly examined the stupidity and the racism and the ignorance of these papers. And we shall be talking more in later editions. And we shall be talking more about the Times. The Times two-page spread. So the time would be just now under about 10 minutes or so under 2 hours. So we shall be, this is an incomplete edition about the Nusrat Ghani allegations and Nusrat Ghani's experience.